The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched the man I loved destroy everything we'd built together with just one careless sentence. The restaurant buzzed around us, filled with our friends celebrating what should have been our engagement announcement. Instead, I sat frozen, watching their faces shift from confusion to uncomfortable silence as Rowan's words echoed in the air like poison. "Stop acting like we're married, Mabel. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was sharp, cutting, the kind that strips away your dignity piece by piece. I smiled through it all, my face a perfect mask while my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. But as I sat there, something cold and calculating began to bloom in my chest. Something that would change everything. 3 weeks later, when Rowan stumbled home from his guy's weekend, with sand in his hair and another woman's perfume on his clothes, his keys wouldn't turn in the lock. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Whitmore, watched from her window as he frantically tried again and again, confusion painted across his face. "Excuse me," he called to her, desperation creeping into his voice. "Do you know what happened to my apartment?" Mrs. Whitmore's weathered face cracked into a knowing smile. "Oh, that nice young lady moved out 2 weeks ago. Said something about the lease being in her name only. Funny thing is she left quite a few boxes on the curb. Seemed to be men's clothes and personal items. Garbage truck took them away this morning." That's when Rowan started begging. But by then it was far too late. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. My name is Mabel Everett and I used to believe in fairy tales. For 2 years I lived in what I thought was love's perfect embrace. Rowan Enzo was everything a woman could want. Tall, charming, with eyes the color of storm clouds and a smile that could make you forget your own name. He had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when he looked at you, like you were precious and rare and utterly essential to his happiness. I should have known it was all a lie. The signs were there from the beginning, subtle as spider silk but just as strong. The way he'd check his phone constantly during our dates, his fingers dancing across the screen with practiced ease. How he'd disappear for hours without explanation, returning with vague stories about work emergencies or family obligations. The women who'd approach us sometimes, their eyes filled with a recognition I couldn't quite place, quickly turning away when they saw me beside him. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? It makes you explain away the red flags, paint them pretty colors and hang them like decorations around your heart. I was working as a freelance graphic designer then, my small apartment serving as both home and office. The lease was in my name, a detail that would prove crucial later, because Rowan's credit had some temporary issues he was sorting out. He moved in gradually like a tide creeping up the shore. First a toothbrush, then spare clothes. Before I knew it, he was there every night, his presence filling my space until it felt like ours. "You're so independent, Mabel," he'd say, kissing my temple as I worked late into the night on client projects. "It's one of the things I love about you. You don't need me, but you choose me." How those words would come back to haunt us both. The apartment itself was my sanctuary, a converted loft in the arts district with exposed brick walls and enormous windows that caught the light just right. I'd saved for 3 years to afford the security deposit, working double shifts at a coffee shop while building my design portfolio. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration, every plant that brought life to the corners, it was all mine. All paid for with money I'd earned through sleepless nights and endless determination. Rowan contributed nothing to the rent, claiming he was between opportunities, and working on a big business deal that would pay off soon. I didn't mind. Love is supposed to be about partnership, about supporting each other through rough patches. I believed we were building something together, that his struggles were temporary setbacks on our path to forever. God, I was naive. The evening that changed everything started like so many others. We were at Giuseppe's, an intimate Italian restaurant where Rowan had taken me for our 6-month anniversary. The warm glow of candlelight danced across the white tablecloth, and the air was thick with the aroma of garlic and wine. I thought we were there to celebrate something beautiful. Rumors had been swirling among our friend group that Rowan was planning to propose. I'd even bought a new dress for the occasion, a deep emerald green that brought out my eyes and hugged my curves in all the right places. I'd spent hours getting ready, painting my nails, curling my hair until it fell in perfect waves around my shoulders. In the mirror, I looked like a woman ready to start the next chapter of her life. Our friends began arriving around 8. Couples we double-dated with, people from Rowan's work, a few of my closest girlfriends. The energy was electric, everyone stealing glances at Rowan, waiting for something momentous to happen. I could feel it too, that sense of anticipation hanging in the air like a promise. But as the evening wore on, something felt off. Rowan was distracted, checking his phone more than usual. His smile seemed forced, his laughter just a beat too late. When Jessica, my best friend since college, asked him about his recent business trip to Miami, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "How was Florida?" she asked innocently, swirling her wine. "Mabel said you were there for work?" "It was fine," he replied curtly, not meeting her eyes. "Just meetings. Boring stuff." But I'd seen the Instagram photos he'd forgotten to hide. Pictures of him on a beach, clearly not alone, though he'd cropped out whoever was with him. When I'd asked about them, he'd laughed it off, claiming a colleague had taken them during a break between meetings. The conversation moved on, but the tension lingered like smoke in the air. It was Parker, one of Rowan's coworkers, who brought up the weekend trip that would ultimately destroy us. "So, Rowan, you still coming to Vegas with us next month? The guys are planning something epic." I felt my smile falter. This was the first I'd heard of any Vegas trip. "Vegas?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "When is this happening?" Rowan's eyes flashed with something I couldn't identify. Annoyance? Guilt? "It's just a guy's weekend, babe. Nothing serious." "I thought we were going to look at venues that weekend," I said softly, remembering the conversation we'd had just days before about visiting potential wedding locations. "For our..." "Stop acting like we're married, Mabel." The words came out harsher than he'd probably intended, cutting through the warm restaurant air like a blade. "You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." The table fell silent. Someone's fork clinked against their plate. In the distance, a couple at another table was laughing, their joy a stark contrast to the suffocating awkwardness that had settled over us. I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation as several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then Parker laughed, a nervous, uncomfortable sound that others quickly joined. Soon half the table was chuckling as if Rowan's cruel words were just a joke, just a man asserting his independence in that casual way men sometimes do. "Rowan has a point," said Derek, another of his friends. "Can't let them get too comfortable giving orders, right?" More laughter. Louder this time. I smiled. God help me, I smiled and stayed quiet, playing the part of the understanding girlfriend who could take a joke. But inside something fundamental was breaking. Not just breaking, shattering into pieces so small they could never be put back together. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I went through the motions, made small talk, laughed at the right moments. But I was somewhere else entirely, floating above the scene like a ghost watching her own life implode. When the check came, Rowan made a show of reaching for his wallet before realizing he'd left his credit card at home. "Babe, can you get this one?" he asked with that charming smile that had once made my knees weak. "I'll pay you back tomorrow." I paid. Of course I paid. I always paid. We walked home in silence, the October air crisp against my skin. Dead leaves crunched under our feet, and I couldn't help but think how fitting it was, everything dying around us as whatever we'd had withered away. "You're being dramatic," Rowan said as we climbed the stairs to my apartment. "It was just a joke, Mabel." Everyone laughed. "Everyone laughed," I repeated, fishing my keys from my purse. "Exactly. You're overreacting." I unlocked the door and stepped inside, Rowan following behind me. The familiar space felt different somehow, tainted by what had happened at dinner. I looked around at the life I'd built, the home I'd created, and saw it all with new eyes. "Are you going to Vegas?" I asked, turning to face him. He was already loosening his tie, that casual gesture of a man who felt completely secure in his place in my life. "Probably. Like I said, it's just the guys." "What about the venue visits?" "We can do that another time. There's no rush, right?" He moved closer, reaching for me with those hands that had once felt like safety. "Come on, babe. Don't be like this. You know I love you." I let him kiss me. I let him think everything was fine. I let him believe that his words hadn't just shown me exactly who he really was, and exactly how little I meant to him. But as he slept beside me that night, snoring softly with one arm thrown across my waist, I stared at the ceiling and planned. For the first time in 2 years I saw clearly. The man I'd loved was a mirage. A beautiful lie that had kept me dancing to his tune while he lived rent-free in my home, ate my food, and treated me like a convenient placeholder until something better came along. The Vegas trip was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare for what would be the most satisfying moment of my life. 3 weeks to plan the perfect revenge. The morning after the dinner, I woke up to an empty bed and the sound of the shower running. Rowan was humming, actually humming, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't publicly humiliated me in front of all our friends. As if those words hadn't carved themselves into my soul with surgical precision. I lay there listening to him, this man who had shared my bed for 2 years but apparently never saw me as an equal partner. The water shut off, and soon he emerged with a towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets catching the morning light as they traced paths down his chest. "Morning, beautiful," he said, that easy smile playing at his lips. "Sleep well." "Like a baby," I lied. He moved around the room with casual confidence, pulling on clothes from the dresser I'd bought, the drawers I'd given him space in. Watching him dress in my bedroom in my home, using my towels and my soap, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I've got to head out early today," he said, not looking at me as he buttoned his shirt. "Meeting with some investors about that startup idea I mentioned." Another lie. I could tell by the way his eyes avoided mine, the slight tension in his shoulders. In 2 years I'd learned to read his tells, though I'd always chosen to ignore them before. "Will you be home for dinner?" I asked, keeping my voice light and casual. "Might be late. Don't wait up." He kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture the kind you give a child or a pet, and left. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the slam of the building's front door, and then silence. I waited exactly 10 minutes before getting up. My laptop was already open on the kitchen table where I'd left it the night before. I made coffee with shaking hands, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. Part of me wanted to ignore what had happened, to pretend that the man I loved was just having a bad night. But a larger part, the part that had been quietly cataloging inconsistencies for months, knew better. I started with his phone records. Don't ask me how I got access. Love makes you do things you never thought you were capable of, and Rowan had never been particularly careful about hiding his passwords. His phone bill told a story of late-night calls to numbers I didn't recognize, extensive texting conversations that happened while he was supposedly working or with the guys. One number appeared with alarming frequency. I plugged it into a reverse lookup service and found a name, Sophia Delacroix. A quick social media search revealed a stunning brunette with full lips and eyes like warm honey. Her Instagram was public, filled with photos of expensive dinners, weekend getaways, and herself in beautiful locations I recognized. The beach in Miami. The rooftop bar where Rowan claimed he'd had a business dinner last month. The hiking trail he said he'd discovered while clearing his head, alone. In every photo there were subtle signs of a companion. 2 wine glasses on a table, a shadow that suggested someone taking the picture. A reflection in her sunglasses that looked remarkably like Rowan's profile. My hands trembled as I scrolled through months of posts, each one a small confirmation of what I was beginning to understand. This wasn't just emotional cheating. This was a full-blown relationship, complete with romantic getaways and intimate moments that should have been ours. But Sophia wasn't the only one. The deeper I dug, the more names I found. Amanda, a marketing executive who'd posted photos from the same restaurant where Rowan had taken me for our 1-year anniversary, 2 weeks before our actual date. Rebecca Foster, whose location tags matched several of Rowan's mysterious work trips. Each woman beautiful, successful, and completely unaware of the others. How had he managed it? How had he kept us all separate, all believing we were special, all thinking we had something real with him? The answer came to me as I found a group chat thread he'd accidentally left open on the iPad I'd bought him for Christmas. It was titled The Boys, but the conversation revealed something far more sinister than typical guy banter. "Rowan, Miami was incredible. Sophia thinks we're exclusive now. Oh. Tyler and Afum, you still keeping the artist girl as home base? Rowan, for now. Free rent and she's always working so I can do whatever. Best setup I've ever had. Derganich. What about the lawyer chick? Thought you were into her. Rowan, Amanda's great for expensive dinners and connections. Different girls for different needs, you know? Tyrandahu, you're playing with fire, man. Rowan, They're all so desperate to believe in love that they explain away everything. It's almost too easy. I read the conversation 3 times before the words truly sank in. Free rent. Different girls for different needs. Almost too easy. That's all I was to him. A convenient home base. A woman so desperate to believe in love that I'd explain away his lies, pay his bills, and smile while he humiliated me in public. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It started as a burning in my chest and spread outward like wildfire, consuming every tender feeling I'd ever had for Rowan Enzo. In its place grew something harder, sharper, infinitely more dangerous. But I didn't throw things or scream or confront him immediately like some scorned woman in a movie. Instead, I did something much worse. I planned. I spent the next week documenting everything. Screenshots of conversations, photos of credit card statements showing charges that didn't match his stories, records of when he came and went from the apartment. I created files on each of the women, learning their patterns, their social media habits, their professional lives. Sophia was a real estate agent who prided herself on her integrity and honesty. She posted motivational quotes about trust and authenticity daily. Amanda was a corporate lawyer known for her fierce reputation and zero tolerance for dishonesty in business or personal matters. Rebecca ran a successful lifestyle blog about finding genuine happiness and authentic relationships. Each woman would be devastated to learn the truth about Rowan. But more importantly, each woman deserved to know the truth. The plan began to take shape in my mind, elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. But I needed more than just evidence of cheating. I needed something that would truly make him understand what it felt like to lose everything you thought you could count on. That's when I remembered the lease. My name was on everything. The lease, the utilities, the internet, even the parking spot in the building's garage that Rowan used for his car. Legally, he had no claim to any of it. He wasn't even officially a tenant. In the eyes of the law, he was just an extended house guest who had overstayed his welcome. But ending things wouldn't be enough. Not after what he'd put me through. Not after discovering that our entire relationship had been built on lies and manipulation. Not after learning that he'd been laughing about me with his friends, treating me like a joke, a convenient fool who paid for the privilege of being deceived. No, Rowan deserved something much more poetic than a simple breakup. He deserved to lose everything exactly the way I had. Suddenly, completely, and in the most humiliating way possible. The Vegas trip was still 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to prepare for the most satisfying goodbye of my life. The plan required precision, timing, and a level of cold calculation I'd never known I possessed. But Love Betrayed has a way of sharpening the mind, turning soft emotions into steel-hard resolve. I started with the apartment. My lease was up for renewal in 3 months, but the building management allowed month-to-month arrangements with 30 days' notice. Perfect. I scheduled an appointment with the property manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, for the following week. "I hate to lose you, Mabel," she said when I explained I'd be moving out. "You've been such a wonderful tenant. No noise complaints, always pay on time, keep the place immaculate." "Thank you. I just need a change of scenery," I replied, signing the termination papers. "I'll be out by the end of the month." "And your boyfriend? Will he need to be added to any documentation for the security deposit return?" I smiled sweetly. "Oh, he's not on the lease. Never was. Just a guest who stayed a little too long." Understanding flickered in her eyes. She'd seen this scenario before. "I see. Well, the deposit will be returned to you directly then, since you're the sole leaseholder." Next came the harder part, finding a new place without Rowan knowing. I scheduled apartment viewings for times when he was supposedly at work, though I now knew he was likely with one of his other women. I found a perfect 1-bedroom loft across town, signed the lease using my maiden name and a different phone number, and arranged for movers to come during his Vegas trip. The beauty of living with someone who paid no attention to household details was that Rowan never noticed when I started slowly packing non-essential items into boxes I stored in the building's basement unit. Winter clothes, books, decorative items, half of my kitchen equipment. It all went into storage while he remained blissfully unaware. But the apartment was just the beginning. Through careful social media reconnaissance, I'd learned that all 3 of Rowan's other women would be in the city during his Vegas weekend. Sophia had an open house scheduled for Sunday afternoon. Amanda was attending a legal conference that ended Saturday evening. Rebecca was hosting a wellness retreat that concluded Sunday morning. I created anonymous email accounts and began drafting messages. Not accusations. Nothing that would seem like jealous ravings from a scorned woman. Instead, I posed as a concerned friend who thought they deserved to know the truth about the man they were dating. The emails were carefully crafted, professional in tone, and included just enough evidence to be believable without seeming malicious. Screenshots of Rowan's dating profiles. Yes, he had active profiles on 3 different apps, all claiming to be looking for something serious. Photos from social media where his lies were exposed by timestamps and locations. Credit card receipts that proved he was living off one woman while romancing others. I scheduled these emails to be sent Sunday evening, right around the time Rowan would be returning from Vegas, exhausted and unsuspecting. But I wasn't finished yet. The masterpiece of my revenge required one more element: public humiliation that matched what he'd done to me at Giuseppe's. And I knew exactly how to achieve it. Remember Tyler_M from the group chat? A little more digging revealed him to be Tyler Morrison, Rowan's best friend since college and the best man at his brother's wedding last year. Tyler had a very public social media presence where he loved to post about loyalty, brotherhood, and real men taking care of business. Tyler also had a serious girlfriend named Emma who followed me on Instagram. Emma, who had been at the dinner where Rowan humiliated me. Emma, who had looked uncomfortable but said nothing when everyone laughed. Emma deserved to know that her boyfriend was not only complicit in Rowan's cheating but actively encouraging it. I crafted another anonymous message for Emma, this one including screenshots of the group chat where Tyler and the others discussed their friends' multiple relationships like it was a game. Where they laughed about deceiving women, about taking advantage of our trust, about treating us like resources to be exploited. But I saved the best part for last. Through their group chat, I'd learned about a tradition they had: posting photos and stories from their trips in a shared album that their girlfriends and wives could access. It was supposed to prove they weren't doing anything inappropriate, just guys being guys. Except Rowan always forgot to check what his friends posted. I had no doubt that this Vegas trip would include activities they wouldn't want their partners to see. And when those photos inevitably surfaced in the shared album, every woman in their lives would see exactly who these men really were. All I had to do was wait. The week before Vegas arrived with agonizing slowness. Rowan was increasingly distracted, spending hours on his phone and coming home later each night. He claimed he was working extra hours to afford the trip, but his credit card statements, which I still had access to, told a different story. He was charging everything to the card I'd added him to for emergencies, racking up debt for expensive dinners and gifts that certainly weren't for me. "I'll miss you while you're gone," I said the night before he left, curled against his chest in our bed. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I needed to maintain the facade for just a little longer. "I'll miss you too, babe," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my hair. "It's just a couple days. I'll be back before you know it." "Promise me you'll be good," I whispered, the words carrying a double meaning he couldn't possibly understand. He laughed, the sound rumbling in his chest. "When am I ever not good?" If only he knew how prophetic those words would prove to be. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. Rowan bustled around the apartment, packing his suitcase with the excitement of a man about to taste freedom. He was practically vibrating with anticipation, and watching him made my stomach turn. "Don't wait up for me tonight," he said, zipping up his bag. "Flight doesn't land until late and we'll probably grab dinner at the hotel." I nodded from the kitchen table where I sat with my coffee, watching the man I'd loved for 2 years transform into a stranger before my eyes. Had he always been this eager to get away from me? Had I just been too blind to see it? "Have fun with the boys," I said, managing a smile. He kissed my forehead again, that same patronizing gesture that had begun to feel like a slap. "Love you, babe." "Love you too," I whispered to his retreating form. The moment the door closed behind him, I sprang into action. The movers were coming Monday morning, but I had preparation work to do. I spent Friday boxing up more of my belongings, leaving out only what I'd need for the weekend and a few of Rowan's favorite things I wanted him to see one last time before he lost them forever. Saturday was the hardest day. With Rowan gone, the apartment felt different, charged with possibility and grief in equal measure. I found myself wandering from room to room, saying goodbye to the life we'd built together. Or rather, the life I'd built while he took advantage of my generosity and love. I allowed myself one moment of weakness, sitting on our bed with a photo from our first vacation together. We looked so happy, so genuinely connected. His arms were wrapped around me from behind, both of us laughing at something just outside the frame. For a brief moment I wondered if I was making a mistake. Maybe the man in this photo was the real Rowan and everything else was just a phase he'd grow out of. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a photo on social media. It was Emma, Tyler's girlfriend, posting a girls' night photo from Friday evening. She was out with friends while the boys were in Vegas and she looked genuinely happy. In the caption she wrote about missing Tyler but trusting him completely because their relationship was built on honesty and respect. The irony was so sharp it could have cut glass. That night I ordered takeout from Giuseppe's. A final meal in the place where everything had started to unravel. As I ate alone at the kitchen table where Rowan and I had shared so many dinners, I felt a strange sense of peace settling over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, my right to be treated as an equal partner rather than a convenient resource. Sunday morning I woke up to missed calls from Rowan. 3 of them, all from around 2 a.m. Vegas time. When I called back he sounded hungover and paranoid. "Hey babe, just wanted to check in," he said, his voice rough with sleep and alcohol. "Make sure everything's okay at home." "Everything's perfect," I assured him. "How's Vegas?" Good. Just the usual guy stuff. You know how it is." "I'm starting to," I murmured. There was a pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, sweetie. Just missing you. When does your flight get in?" The suspicion left his voice, replaced by that casual confidence I'd once found attractive. "Around 6 tonight. Don't bother picking me up, I'll just grab an Uber." "Hey. I'll see you at home." "See you at home," he echoed and hung up. But of course he wouldn't see me at home. Because by 6 p.m., there would be no home for him to return to. At exactly 3 p.m. I sent the emails. 3 carefully crafted messages to 3 women who deserved so much better than Rowan Enzo. I included evidence, screenshots, receipts, everything they needed to understand that the man they'd been dating was a fraud. I explained about the group chat, the multiple relationships, the way he'd been categorizing women based on what they could provide for him. The message to Emma was different, more personal. I included the screenshots that proved her boyfriend was not only aware of Rowan's behavior but actively encouraging it. The conversations where Tyler joked about keeping girlfriends in line and making sure they didn't get too demanding. Then I sat back and waited. The responses came faster than I'd expected. Sophia called first, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief. We talked for nearly an hour, comparing stories, filling in gaps in each other's knowledge. She'd suspected something was off but had talked herself out of her concerns, just like I had. "He told me you were just a friend he was helping out," she said, her voice cracking. "Said you were going through a rough time and he was letting you crash at his place temporarily." "His place," I repeated, tasting the bitter irony. "Sophia, he's never paid a penny of rent. The lease is entirely in my name." The sound she made was half laugh, half sob. "God, what fools we've been." Amanda's response was more controlled but no less furious. As a lawyer, she was already thinking in terms of consequences and justice. "Do you have evidence of financial fraud?" she asked. "If he used credit cards under false pretenses, represented himself as living somewhere he had no legal right to be, there might be criminal charges we could pursue." "I have everything," I assured her. "Every lie, every receipt, every promise he made to each of us." Rebecca's message came via email, longer and more thoughtful than the others. She wrote about the signs she'd ignored, the way Rowan had made her feel special while keeping her separate from the rest of his life. She thanked me for having the courage to reach out, for caring enough about strangers to save them from further heartbreak. But the most satisfying response came from Emma. Her first message was a simple, "Oh my God." 20 minutes later she called me directly. "Is this real?" she asked without preamble. "These screenshots, Tyler really said these things?" "Every word. I have timestamps and everything." She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, "They're supposed to come home tonight. All of them, acting like heroes returning from battle. Tyler has dinner reservations for us, said he wanted to celebrate surviving another weekend with the boys." "I'm sorry, Emma. I know this isn't easy to hear. Don't apologize. You've given me the truth and that's more than anyone else has done." Her voice was steady now, determined. "What are you going to do when he gets home?" I looked around the apartment at the boxes hidden in closets, at the life I'd built that was about to disappear like smoke. He's going to get exactly what he deserves. Good, Emma said fiercely. He deserves everything that's coming to him. At 5:30 p.m. I made my final preparations. I packed the last of my essential belongings into 2 suitcases and loaded them into my car. I left behind everything that was joint property. The couch we'd picked out together, the coffee table I'd bought but he'd claimed to love, the kitchen appliances he'd used but never contributed to purchasing. The only things I took were what was legally and morally mine. Everything else would serve as a reminder of what he'd lost through his own choices. I left the keys on the kitchen table along with a single piece of paper, a printed copy of our lease agreement with the termination notice attached. On top of that, I placed screenshots of his group chat conversations, printed in full color with timestamps clearly visible. No note. No explanation. Just the truth, laid out in undeniable black and white. Then I called Mrs. Rodriguez. The apartment is ready for turnover, I told her. I've left the keys inside. The locks can be changed at your convenience. What about your boyfriend's belongings? I looked around at the clothes in the closet, the toiletries in the bathroom, the personal items scattered throughout what had been our shared space. He's not on the lease, I reminded her. Anything left behind becomes property of the building, to be disposed of as you see fit. Understood. Thank you for being such a wonderful tenant, Mabel. I hope your next place brings you happiness. I think it will, I said and meant it. At exactly 6 p.m. I drove away from the building that had housed my old life. I didn't look back, didn't take one last glance at the windows that had been home. That chapter was over and I was finally free to write a new one. My phone started buzzing 20 minutes later. The calls started coming in rapid succession, each one more desperate than the last. I let them all go to voicemail, driving through the city toward my new apartment with a sense of liberation I hadn't felt in years. The sun was setting behind me, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that seemed almost symbolic. The end of one day, the promise of another. But curiosity got the better of me. At a red light, I played the first voicemail. Mabel, what the hell is going on? My key doesn't work. Call me back. Now. Rowan's voice was tight with confusion and the beginnings of panic. The second message, left 10 minutes later. Babe, this isn't funny. The neighbor said something about you moving out? That can't be right. We need to talk. Call me back. By the fifth message, his tone had shifted from confusion to bargaining. Look, I don't know what someone told you, but we can work through this. Whatever you think happened in Vegas, it's not what it looks like. Please, Mabel. We love each other. Don't throw away 2 years over some misunderstanding. I almost laughed at that one. Misunderstanding. As if 2 years of systematic deception and emotional manipulation was just a simple miscommunication. The messages continued throughout the evening, each one revealing another layer of his desperation. He'd gone from denial to anger to bargaining in the span of 2 hours, and I could practically hear his world crumbling through the phone. But the most satisfying call came from a number I didn't recognize. You vindictive bitch. Tyler's voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. What the hell did you send to Emma? She's packed her bags and moved in with her sister. She won't even talk to me. Hello to you too, Tyler, I said calmly, pulling into the parking garage of my new building. This is psychotic behavior, Mabel. Destroying relationships over what, some joke your boyfriend made at dinner? You're unhinged. I'm unhinged. I laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. Tyler, I have screenshots of you encouraging your best friend to manipulate and use multiple women simultaneously. You called us desperate and said we were almost too easy to deceive. So tell me, who's really the psychotic one here? Silence. Then, those conversations were private. So was my relationship with Rowan, but that didn't stop you from treating it like entertainment. I got out of my car, my heels clicking against the pavement with satisfying authority. Emma deserved to know who she was really dating. They all did. You've ruined everything. No, Tyler. You and Rowan ruined everything the moment you decided that women were just resources to be exploited. I just made sure there were consequences. I hung up before he could respond and blocked his number immediately. My new apartment was everything the old one wasn't. Smaller but entirely mine. Modern where the other had been vintage, quiet where before there had always been the underlying tension of living a lie. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion and settled onto my new couch to listen to the rest of Rowan's messages. They painted a picture of a man slowly realizing that his carefully constructed world was falling apart. By message 8 he'd apparently talked to Sophia. "Mabel, please. I know you're angry and I know I made mistakes, but this is crazy. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're upset. Sophia is threatening to file a police report for fraud. This is getting out of hand." Message 12 revealed he'd been in contact with Amanda too. "The lawyer girl is talking about pressing charges. She says I represented myself falsely, committed financial fraud. Babe, I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you. I've always loved you. Can't we just talk about this like adults?" But it was message 15 that made me smile. They're all comparing notes now. All three of them are in some kind of group chat sharing information about me. This is insane, Mabel. You've turned them into a witch hunt. Please, I'm begging you. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them we broke up and I was confused. I'll do anything. Anything. The word echoed in my mind as I sipped my wine and watched the city lights twinkle beyond my new windows. Now he was willing to do anything, when just days before he'd publicly humiliated me and told me I had no say in his life. Too little too late. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is this Mabel? This is Sophia. The other girls and I would like to meet with you tomorrow if you're available. We have some things to discuss." I smiled and typed back, "I'd like that very much." The next morning brought a fresh wave of desperation from Rowan. He'd apparently spent the night in his car or a hotel, because the messages were coming from different locations according to the background noise. "I went by the building this morning. Mrs. Rodriguez said you terminated the lease. She wouldn't let me get my stuff. She said since I wasn't on the lease, my belongings are considered abandoned property. Mabel, that's my whole life in there. My clothes, my laptop, my grandfather's watch. You can't just throw away 2 years of my life." But I could and I had. Just like he'd thrown away 2 years of mine with his lies and manipulation. The meeting with the other women was set for noon at a small cafe downtown. I arrived early, ordering coffee and choosing a table in the back where we could talk privately. One by one they arrived and I was struck by how different yet similar we all were. Sophia was stunning in person with the kind of effortless elegance that made you understand why Rowan had been drawn to her. But her eyes held a hardness now, a sharp intelligence that had been awakened by betrayal. Amanda carried herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, her designer suit and confident stride speaking to her success in the legal world. Yet there was something vulnerable about her now, a crack in the armor that Rowan's deception had created. Rebecca was softer, more ethereal, with the kind of natural beauty that needed no enhancement. She looked like she'd been crying, but her jaw was set with determination. "So," Sophia said once we'd all settled in with our drinks, "here we are. For women who thought we knew Rowan Enzo." "I've been thinking about this all night," Amanda said, her legal mind clearly working through the implications. The financial fraud alone could put him in serious legal trouble. Using credit cards under false pretenses, representing himself as a tenant when he had no legal standing, there are definitely criminal charges we could pursue. "What about the emotional damage?" Rebecca asked quietly. "I know it sounds naive, but I genuinely believed we were building something real. I turned down other opportunities, other relationships because I thought we had a future together." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It doesn't sound naive. It sounds human. We all believed what he wanted us to believe." Sophia pulled out her phone and scrolled through something. "I've been going through our conversations looking for patterns. He told each of us essentially the same lies, just customized to what he thought we wanted to hear. He told me he was a serial entrepreneur looking for the right woman to build an empire with. What did he tell you, Amanda? That he was between ventures but had connections in tech that would make us both wealthy if I helped him navigate some legal issues with investors." Amanda's laugh was bitter. "He never had any investors, did he? And he told me he was searching for authentic connection, someone who understood the spiritual side of success," Rebecca added. "Said he was tired of shallow women who only cared about money. While he told me he was just helping out a friend who was down on her luck," I said. "Made me sound like a charity case he was too kind to abandon." We sat in silence for a moment, each processing the full scope of Rowan's deception. He hadn't just been unfaithful, he'd created entirely different personas for each relationship, telling us what he thought we wanted to hear while taking what he wanted from each situation. The question now, Amanda said, is what we do about it. I want him to face legal consequences, Sophia said firmly. What he did to us was financial fraud, emotional manipulation, and God knows what else. Men like this don't stop unless they're forced to. I agree, Rebecca said, surprising us all with the steel in her voice. But I also want other women to know who he really is. He's probably already moving on to new targets. Amanda nodded. I can handle the legal side. I have contacts in the DA's office who specialize in fraud cases. Between the four of us, we have enough evidence to build a solid case. And I can handle the public side, Sophia added. Real estate is all about reputation and trust. I know how to make sure word gets around about what kind of man Rowan really is. They all looked at me waiting for my contribution. I thought about the man who had shared my bed for 2 years, who had made me believe I was building a future while he laughed about me with his friends. The man who had humiliated me in public and then expected me to smile and take it. I want him to understand what it feels like to lose everything, I said quietly. Not just the relationships, not just the money. Everything. His reputation, his social circle, his sense of security. I want him to feel as small and powerless as he made me feel. Sophia smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. I think we can arrange that. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Amanda would file a complaint with the police and begin gathering evidence for potential charges. Sophia would use her extensive network in the city to make sure Rowan's reputation was thoroughly destroyed in professional circles. Rebecca would document everything for a blog post that would serve as a warning to other women. Me. I would make sure he understood that actions have consequences, that you can't build your happiness on other people's pain without eventually paying the price. As we prepared to leave, my phone rang. Rowan again, probably calling from whatever hotel or friend's couch he'd managed to find for the night. Are you going to answer it? Sophia asked. I looked at the screen, at the name that had once made my heart skip with joy and now filled me with cold satisfaction. Actually, yes. I think I am. I swiped to accept the call and put it on speaker so the others could hear. Mabel, thank God. Please, we need to talk. This has gone too far. I know I made mistakes, but... Rowan, I interrupted, my voice calm and controlled. I'm here with Sophia, Amanda, and Rebecca. We've been having the most interesting conversation. Dead silence on the other end. We know everything, I continued. Every lie, every manipulation, every cruel joke you and your friends made at our expense. And we've decided that there need to be consequences. Mabel, please. The legal system will handle the fraud charges. Amanda's crisp voice cut through his pleading. I'll be filing a complaint this afternoon. And I'll make sure everyone in our professional circles knows exactly who you are, Sophia added. Trust is everything in business, Rowan. You'll find it very difficult to operate in this city once word gets around. You can't do this to me, he said, and I could hear the desperation bleeding through his attempt at authority. This is harassment. This is justice, Rebecca said softly. This is what happens when you treat people like objects instead of human beings. Mabel, he tried one more time, his voice breaking. I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something? I thought about love, real love, not the convenient affection he'd shown me when it served his purposes. Real love was respect, honesty, partnership. It was seeing someone as an equal, not a resource to be managed and manipulated. Love isn't just a word, Rowan, I said. It's a choice you make every single day. And every day for 2 years, you chose to lie to me, to use me, to make me feel like I was asking for too much when I wanted basic respect and honesty. That's not love. That's selfishness dressed up in pretty words. So this is it? You're just going to destroy my entire life. No, I said, standing up from the table as the other women gathered their things. You destroyed your own life the moment you decided that other people's feelings didn't matter. We're just making sure there are consequences for that choice. I hung up before he could respond, and for the first time in weeks I felt truly free. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new apartment reading the morning news when I came across a small item in the business section that made me smile. Local entrepreneur Rowan Enzo charged with multiple counts of fraud, the headline read. The article was brief but damning, outlining charges related to credit card fraud, false representation, and financial manipulation affecting multiple victims. Amanda had been thorough in her legal research. It turned out that Rowan's pattern of behavior constituted several criminal offenses, and the DA's office had been surprisingly receptive to building a case. Apparently, he wasn't the first charming sociopath they'd encountered, and they appreciated having victims who were organized, articulate, and determined to see justice done. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Did you see the news? Channel 7 is doing a follow-up story tonight about romance fraud." They interviewed Rebecca about her blog post. Rebecca's blog post had gone viral within days of publication. Titled "The Anatomy of a Master Manipulator: How I Discovered My Boyfriend Was Dating Multiple Women," it had been shared thousands of times and generated hundreds of comments from women sharing similar experiences. Rebecca had a gift for writing that made the story both devastating and empowering, showing how intelligent, successful women could be deceived while also providing a roadmap for recognizing the warning signs. The post had been picked up by several major media outlets, and Rebecca had become something of an accidental spokesperson for romance fraud awareness. She'd handled the attention with grace, using her platform to help other women rather than simply seeking revenge. But the media attention was just the beginning of Rowan's problems. Sophia's network in the business community had proven remarkably effective at spreading the word about his character. Within a week of our meeting, he'd been dropped by 3 potential business partners and had his membership revoked at 2 professional organizations. In a city where reputation was everything, he'd become radioactive. Tyler hadn't fared much better. Emma's decision to leave him had created a domino effect in their social circle, with other women questioning their own relationships and demanding to see their boyfriends' group chats. 2 more couples had broken up, and Tyler found himself increasingly isolated as people learned about his role in encouraging Rowan's behavior. Derek and the other men from the group chat were facing their own reckonings as their girlfriends and wives discovered the true nature of their boys' nights. It turned out that the Vegas trip photos, which had indeed been posted to their shared album, showed exactly the kind of behavior they'd all denied engaging in. Expensive dinners with women who weren't their partners, hotel room parties with strangers, the kind of activities that made their claims of innocent fun ring hollow. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was completely unplanned. I was having coffee with my friend Jessica, the same Jessica who had been at the disastrous dinner at Giuseppe's, when she mentioned running into Rowan at a grocery store. "He looked terrible," she said, stirring her latte thoughtfully. "I mean physically terrible. Like he hadn't slept in days. He tried to approach me, probably hoping I'd give you a message or something, but I just walked away. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him, but honestly, looking at him was punishment enough." "How do you mean?" "Mabel, the man was shopping with coupons and buying generic everything. He looked like someone who'd lost everything and was trying to figure out how to survive on nothing. Which I guess is exactly what happened." It was true. Without free rent and a girlfriend to split expenses with, Rowan was discovering what life actually cost. His credit cards had been frozen as part of the fraud investigation, and his attempts to find new women to support him had been thwarted by his increasingly notorious reputation. Word had spread through dating apps and social media, creating a network of women who warned each other about him. He'd been forced to move back in with his parents in the suburbs, a development that did nothing to help his already damaged ego. At 32 years old, living in his childhood bedroom while facing criminal charges and complete social exile, he was finally experiencing consequences for his choices. But the story didn't end with his downfall. 6 months after that night at Giuseppe's, I was thriving in ways I hadn't even imagined possible. My design business had exploded after I started focusing all my creative energy on work instead of trying to manage a dysfunctional relationship. I'd landed 3 major corporate clients and was considering hiring an assistant. My new apartment had become a haven of peace and creativity, decorated exactly how I wanted without having to consider someone else's preferences or moods. I'd started painting again, something I'd abandoned during my relationship with Rowan because he'd always found ways to interrupt or diminish my artistic pursuits. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The red flags I'd ignored with Rowan now seemed obvious, and I found myself capable of setting boundaries I never would have imagined before. I was dating again slowly and carefully, but with a clarity about what I wanted and deserved that felt revolutionary. The other women had found their own paths to healing and growth. Sophia had used her experience to start a nonprofit organization focused on financial literacy and fraud prevention, particularly targeting young women. Amanda had gotten involved in legislative efforts to strengthen protections against romance fraud, using her legal expertise to advocate for victims' rights. Rebecca had parlayed her viral blog post into a book deal and a speaking career, traveling around the country to share her story and help others recognize manipulation tactics. She'd found her authentic voice in ways she never could have while being deceived by Rowan's false persona. We'd all stayed in touch, bonded by our shared experience and mutual support. There was something powerful about women who had been through similar trauma choosing to lift each other up rather than compete or tear each other down. We'd created our own support network, one built on truth and genuine care rather than the artificial constructs Rowan had used to manipulate us. On the 1-year anniversary of that terrible dinner, I found myself back at Giuseppe's, not by accident but by choice. I'd decided to reclaim the space, to replace the memory of humiliation with one of triumph. I wasn't alone. Sophia, Amanda, and Rebecca had all agreed to meet me there, along with Emma and 2 other women who had joined our informal support network after discovering their own experiences with manipulative partners. We raised our glasses in a toast to survival, to growth, to the strength we'd found in each other and in ourselves. The restaurant buzzed around us with the same energy as that night a year ago, but this time I was surrounded by people who truly valued and respected me. To consequences, Sophia said, lifting her wine glass. To truth, Amanda added. To authentic connections, Rebecca contributed. To never settling for less than we deserve, Emma finished. To justice, I said, and to the futures we're building for ourselves. We clinked glasses and I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the wine. This was what real relationships looked like. Mutual support, honest communication, shared growth, and genuine care for each other's well-being. As we laughed and talked late into the evening, sharing stories and dreams and plans for the future, I realized that Rowan's betrayal had been the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of the pain it caused, but because of the strength it revealed and the authentic connections it ultimately made possible. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you opens the door to the best thing that was waiting to happen. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted makes room for everything you actually needed. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well, surrounded by people who see your worth and celebrate your truth, while the person who tried to diminish you fades into the irrelevant footnote they always should have been. I never saw Rowan again after that phone call at the cafe, but occasionally news of him would filter back through the network of people who had once been part of our shared social circle. The updates painted a picture of a man whose life had completely unraveled, someone who was still trying to find his footing in a world that no longer tolerated his particular brand of manipulation. He'd pleaded guilty to the fraud charges in exchange for a suspended sentence and community service, avoiding jail time but accepting a criminal record that made employment difficult. His parents had eventually grown tired of supporting their adult son's refusal to take responsibility for his actions, and he'd been forced to find his own housing in a part of town far from his former haunts. The last I heard, he was working at a car dealership in the suburbs, a job that probably suited his skills at deception but offered none of the prestige or easy living he'd become accustomed to. Several women in our network had reported seeing dating profiles for him on various apps, but his reputation had spread far enough that few were willing to take the risk. Tyler and Derek had faced their own consequences, though less severe than Rowan's. Both had lost long-term relationships and found their social circles dramatically reduced. The group chat that had once been a source of cruel entertainment had been disbanded, its members scattered to deal with the fallout from their exposed attitudes toward women and relationships. But the most important part of this story isn't what happened to them, it's what happened to us. Today, as I write this from the office of my successful design firm, I'm surrounded by evidence of a life rebuilt on authenticity and mutual respect. The walls display work I'm genuinely proud of, created for clients who value my expertise and treat me as an equal partner in bringing their visions to life. My team, yes, I now have a team, is made up of talented, passionate individuals who share my commitment to excellence and integrity. Sophia's nonprofit has grown into a nationally recognized organization that has helped thousands of women recognize and escape financial manipulation. She's become a sought-after speaker and advocate, using her experience with Rowan to prevent others from enduring similar abuse. Amanda successfully advocated for stronger romance fraud legislation in our state, creating legal protections that didn't exist when we were going through our ordeal. She's now specializing in victim advocacy law and has helped dozens of women seek justice against manipulative partners. Rebecca's book became a bestseller, and she's currently working on her second manuscript about recovery and rebuilding after emotional trauma. Her speaking engagements have taken her around the world, sharing tools for healing with audiences who desperately need to hear that survival is possible. Emma has become one of our closest friends, bonded by the shared experience of discovering that the men we trusted were not who they claimed to be. She's now engaged to someone who treats her with the respect and honesty she deserves, and their relationship serves as a beautiful example of what love actually looks like when it's real. Our informal support network has grown into something much larger, a community of women who help each other recognize red flags, celebrate successes, and navigate the complex world of modern relationships with wisdom and caution. We've learned that supporting each other doesn't make us weak. It makes us invincible. As for me, I'm no longer the woman who sat silently while her boyfriend humiliated her in public. I'm no longer someone who explains away red flags or accepts less than she deserves. I know my worth now and I refuse to negotiate it. I'm in a relationship again. A real one this time, built on honesty and mutual respect. Michael is nothing like Rowan. He's quiet where Rowan was flashy, steady where Rowan was unpredictable, genuine where Rowan was false. He pays his own bills, respects my boundaries, and treats me as an equal partner in building something beautiful together. More importantly, he sees me not as a resource to be managed or a convenience to be enjoyed, but as a complete person worthy of love and respect. When we disagree, we talk it through. When we make plans, we make them together. When life gets difficult, we face it as a team. This is what I learned from my experience with Rowan Enzo. Authentic love multiplies your strength rather than diminishing it. Real partners lift each other up rather than tearing each other down. And the right person will never make you feel like you're asking for too much when you expect basic decency and respect. The woman who smiled and stayed quiet that night at Giuseppe's is gone, replaced by someone who knows her value and isn't afraid to defend it. I'll never again tolerate being treated as less than equal. And I'll never again silence my voice to preserve someone else's comfort at my expense. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing Rowan the way I did, if I think my revenge was too harsh. The question always surprises me because I don't see what I did as revenge at all. I see it as justice. I see it as protecting other women from the same harm I experienced. I see it as holding someone accountable for choices they made freely and repeatedly. Rowan wasn't a victim of circumstances or a man who made innocent mistakes. He was someone who consciously chose to deceive and manipulate multiple women for his own benefit, someone who laughed about our pain with his friends, someone who saw our love as a weakness to be exploited rather than a gift to be treasured. The consequences he faced were natural results of his actions, not punishments I inflicted out of spite. When you build your life on lies and manipulation, eventually the foundation crumbles. I just made sure it happened sooner rather than later before he could hurt even more people. And that's a choice I'll never regret. Because on the other side of that pain, on the other side of that humiliation and betrayal, I found something I didn't even know I'd lost. Myself. The real me, the one who doesn't apologize for taking up space or asking for what she deserves. The one who builds authentic relationships and creates work that matters. The one who knows the difference between love and manipulation, between partnership and exploitation. Rowan Enzo taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, though I'm sure it wasn't intentional. You teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to tolerate. I tolerated his lies, his disrespect, his casual cruelty, and he escalated accordingly. Never again. Now I teach people how to treat me by showing them exactly what I expect. Honesty, respect, equality, and authentic connection. Some people rise to meet those expectations and they become part of my life. Others reveal themselves to be incapable of genuine relationship, and they remove themselves from consideration. It's a much better way to live. So to anyone reading this who sees themselves in my story, who recognizes the patterns of manipulation and disrespect I once accepted as normal, I want you to know this. You deserve better. You deserve honesty. You deserve respect. You deserve to be seen and valued for who you truly are. And you have the power to demand it. Don't wait for someone to change. Don't make excuses for behavior that hurts you. Don't silence your voice to keep the peace. Trust your instincts, value your worth, and never apologize for expecting to be treated with basic human decency. Your life is too precious to waste on people who don't appreciate what they have in you. And on the other side of the courage it takes to walk away from what's familiar but harmful, you'll find something infinitely better. A life built on truth, surrounded by people who celebrate your worth rather than exploit it. That life is waiting for you. All you have to do is choose it.